Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, I'm here today to talk to you about what is a soul reading. So, first of all, if you want to learn more about what is a soul reading, you can read my 10th book called Reading the Soul. And I'll tell you about how I developed this. So, a soul reading is a process that I personally developed as a result of my many years doing medical intuitive readings. So, um, as of this recording, I'm 65 years old, and I've been doing medical intuitive readings for many years. For the past 8 years, I've had the great privilege of doing medical intuitive readings for a healing center in Costa Rica run by my dear friend Darren McBratney. And before anyone gets there, they send me their photograph and fill out a form. And then without speaking to that person, then I spend about an hour, hour and a half doing a medical intuitive reading for that person. Part of their medical intuitive reading includes looking at what is going on at the soul level. So, as I have discussed in previous shows here at the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, when I do a medical intuitive reading, I look at what I call the 5 levels of healing. So, what are the 5 levels of healing? Your physical body, you know what that is. Your energy body, which includes the chakras, the breath, and the acupuncture system. Your emotional body, which is the largest part of you, actually. And we have to understand that you hold unresolved emotions in your physical body. So, unresolved emotions show up as pain and dis-ease. And then there's your mental body, and that includes your thoughts and beliefs. So I sort of think of your mental body as like your intellectual operating system. So just like with computers, you either have a Mac or one of those other ones. I have a Mac. Prejudice, I like Macs. They're easier, more intuitive for me. An Android type device. So your mental operating system determines how your view of life. So what you think and believe gets projected out into your life, and that's what you experience. And then finally, there's your soul, which is the eternal part of you, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. So not that I'm right, not that I know anything, but I'm going to be sharing with you my point of view. So you have to understand that you are a soul and that absolutely everything that happens to you is always happening on all 5 levels, right? Including at the soul level. So my one of my books is called Unlimited Intuition Now, and it's about all the many ways that you can receive intuitive guidance. So I always say that when you're listening to your intuition, you don't have to get hit over the head. So when I listen to my intuition and I receive my soul guidance, and then I follow that soul guidance, my life is easier. However, many of us, being humans, and we're all just practicing being human, we may get soul guidance, but not necessarily follow it. So, to help you understand the importance of understanding what's going on with your soul, I'm going to give you several examples. I remember years ago being at a convention someplace. I think I was out in California, and I was, in one of these huge lecture halls. There were thousands of people, and I was sitting next to this woman, and she turned to me and she said, "I don't know who you are or what you do, but I know you're here to help me." So anyway, we ended up having a session, and it turned out that she was a psychotherapist. So she was a highly trained professional in mental emotional health. And in her personal history, it turned out that she had been adopted. Now, her mother, her birth mother, the lady who gave birth to her, on one level, you could say that lady was a loser. She had been a drug addict and had gotten into all kinds of trouble and had given up this lady for adoption. But when I did a soul reading and looked at it, what it was that my client, the psychotherapist, had tried many times to be born. So at a soul level, your birth parents, the people who gave birth to you, your birth mom and your birth dad, are often not your first choice of birth parents. So we'll talk about that in a minute. So at any rate, she was determined to get a body and to be born. And after multiple attempts, was not able to do that. But the soul of this drug addict had literally made a choice to literally give up her own life and her own well-being to allow this person to be born. And so as a result of our sessions and a result of my soul reading, she had a completely different view of her birth mother. And she saw and understood that her birth mother at the soul level was a selfless soul who'd given up her own well-being so that she could be born into this lifetime to fulfill her sole purpose of helping others. Here's another example. I remember years ago working with a lady, and her father had been physically abusive. And my client was a large lady, and many people who've been abused physically end up developing rather large bodies out of protection, right? I've had other clients who came into my office, and I have said to them, your weight is not your fault, because they built up this layer of protection, this huge physicality as a result of having been abused earlier. So at any rate, so my client at the time, she remembered standing between her father and the younger children and literally standing as a shield so that the younger children didn't get harmed. And when we looked, and I did a soul reading about why this happened and why she even chose this experience, it turned out that she was choosing to learn strength, literally on all levels, to being physically strong, to being mentally, emotionally strong. And that strength that she had developed as a result of her abusive childhood had served her well because she had become a very successful entrepreneur and did not allow setbacks to deter her. She was a very determined person who could literally stand up to anyone or anything. And for my own self, I had a very difficult childhood with my birth father, who was physically, mentally, emotionally abusive. And I didn't understand it until my first husband, and who was physically abusive, and he's now deceased, rest his soul. But I spent 2 years in a support group for battered women. And during that time, I had, many, many revelations and understandings about why I had chosen that upbringing. I would not be who I am today if it was not for my father. So the big picture is you have to understand that everything is always happening at the soul level. I'll give another example. One of my dear friends was just diagnosed with cancer. And her beloved husband had passed away several years ago. She's been missing him terribly. And she's a great human being who's loved and cherished by many. But I think this cancer diagnosis is really a choice for her. It's like, okay, all right, you get an opportunity to exit or not. And here on the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio, I have interviewed a wonderful psychologist from Canada, Atul Mehra, who's an author of many wonderful books. And he talks about at the soul level, the work that he does to help people fully accept their incarnation in this body in this lifetime. So I've been working with a client recently who has a chronic illness. And, we frequently discuss, and I've helped him overcome his main challenge, which was seizures. But when I talk to him, he says, it all really goes back to the fact that I just don't want to be here. So, at any rate, whenever you are facing a personal challenge, I encourage you to ask yourself, what is going on at the soul level? So I'm going to share with you now some of the things that I look at when I'm doing a medical intuitive reading, and then I go into looking at what is happening at your soul level. So the first thing that I look at is where you are in your process of awakening. Now, a lot of spiritual people put a big emphasis on, on awakening, spiritual awakening. So I'm a grounded, practical person. Even though I am a medical intuitive healer, I'm actually pretty grounded and pretty practical. So there's basically three phases of your spiritual development in this lifetime. You're either unconscious, you're awakening, or you're conscious. So what do I mean by this? In the early stages of your spiritual development, you may not be aware of yourself as a soul or be conscious of what your soul is really up to in this lifetime. So if you think back maybe to when you were a little kid, when I was a little kid, I was just riding my bike and playing with my dolls and being a normal little kid. I didn't think about, my soul. Although I remember when I was 10 years old, I heard about life purpose. And the idea of a life purpose really bothered me and got to me. And I thought, I've got to figure out my life purpose. So I remember when I was 10 years old, I stayed up all night trying to figure out what my life purpose was. So when I was 10 years old, I decided that my life purpose was to write books. And as of this recording, I've published 10 books. And again, Reading the Soul's my 10th book. Now, after you've been unconscious for a while, then you go in a process of awakening. So during this process of awakening, you're discovering that you are, in fact, a soul, and you're in the process of waking up to your soul purpose. So what causes you to awaken? Usually some sort of personal challenge, whether it's an illness or a divorce or the death of a loved one, but something happens and you're like, wait a minute, there's this bigger part of me. There's this eternal part of me, right? Or maybe you go to a church or a synagogue and, pray and connect to your soul purpose. And finally, this third stage is conscious. So when you're conscious, you're aware that you are a soul and you've discovered your soul purpose and are taking action to fulfill it. So for example, my soul purpose is healing. And I want to point out that many people think, oh, my soul purpose is the same as my job. So let's say you're a fireman, right? And you're rescuing people on a regular basis, right? So your soul purpose is not necessarily the same as your job. But when you're conscious, you're aware that you're a soul, you're aware that you're part of this bigger picture and that you have this soul purpose. There's a reason that you're born, right? And even I want to emphasize to you, if you're listening to this, even if you haven't discovered your soul purpose, you still have one. So those are the three phases of spiritual development. And with that, let's take a break and listen to a message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. I'm here today talking to you about my 10th book, Reading the Soul, and the work that I do as a medical intuitive healer, Reading the Soul. We'll be right back. Medical intuitive healer Catherine Carrigan here. I'm talking to you about what is a soul reading. So when I'm doing my soul reading, after I sort of determine where you are in your process of awakening to being a soul and discovering your soul purpose, then I look at what karmas you are here working on. So a simple way to think about this is I ask myself and I read into your soul, what actually is your soul doing, right? So we have to understand that this world is a field of maximum karmic opportunity. So while marching down your soul path, you may be digging up soul baggage, soul suffering, or past life patterns that can be cleared through deep healing work. And when I identify these patterns, then part of the work that I do is that I do karmic clearing. And if you want to understand more about karma, I did an entire radio show explaining what is karma and some of the healing work that I do to clear karma, right? But a really good way to understand karma is that karma is like gravity. Before I ever understood what gravity is, it still worked. Even if you don't believe in gravity or understand gravity, it works. And the simplest way to understand karma is that whatever you put out is actually what comes back to you. So I always feel the most selfish thing I can ever do is to be kind and generous to everybody because whatever I put out is what's coming back to me. And if you look at your life and your life looks like a train wreck, which some of us does, our life does at the moment, then you can ask yourself, well, what kind of energy am I putting out? So if you want to have a different experience of life, put out different kinds of energy. Um, be kind, be compassionate, be understanding, be patient, be a giver, right? And understand that not only are you on your soul path, so is everybody else. And we're all just practicing being a human being. And if you want to put out better energy in order to experience something different, you can ask yourself an important question. And that question is, how can I channel more of the love I already am? How can I channel more of the love I already am for the highest good of myself and others? I'll say that again. How can I channel more of the love I already am for the highest good of myself and others? So, in Native American traditions, we talk about how you are the result of the love of thousands. So, for example, you have 50% of the DNA from your mom and 50% of the DNA from your dad. And then you have 25% of your DNA from each of your grandparents, 12.5% of the DNA from each of your great grandparents, and so on and so forth. You are quite literally the result of the love of thousands. And you carry their ancestral patterns, you carry their karma, and you carry their many of their patterns and their karmas through you and through your DNA and through your lifetime. So again, when you ask yourself, how can I channel more of the love I already am for the highest good of myself and others, then you can put out a different frequency and perhaps experience something even better than you already are. So in this lifetime, your soul will be presented with many challenges and that cause you to learn and grow. And a lot of times we're like, oh my gosh, now my roof is leaking. Oh my goodness. Now I've had a car wreck. Now, oh my goodness, now I've got a speeding ticket. Oh my goodness, now some doctor is giving me a horrible diagnosis. So everything that happens, you have to ask yourself again, what is happening on the soul level? Why is this happening to me? So, some examples of karma that you may be here clearing: addiction. You may be abusing drugs, legal or illegal, or alcohol, overwork, overexercise, or food, or other forms of distraction as a way to avoid the truth of who you really are. Emotional starvation. If you're suffering from the karma of emotional starvation, you don't know how to be kind and compassionate to yourself or nurture your own emotions. Codependency. When you're in this karmic pattern, you've interwoven your personal energy with other people's energy and karma, often to the point of taking on their pain, suffering, and even karma. So you're taking on so much of their energy that you may even be processing their karma, which is not a good thing. Deep-seated negative experiences. You may have experienced trauma in this or another lifetime that has led you to experience PTSD, anxiety, or depression. Someone recently reached out to me from Palestine, the West Bank, and that's a whole other story. But again, it's like at a soul level, why did this lady choose to live in this horrible situation? Anyway, I don't want to go down that path, what I shared with her, but I explained to her that where she's living and the circumstances are not her fault, that she and her compatriots are the victims of psychopathic, narcissistic leaders that they could not control. Genetic code dysfunction. You may have inherited energies programming you for sickness, struggle, and poverty. I remember one of my clients, she had this belief, in our mid 30s, all the women in our family develop these female problems. And many people have a family history, for example, of heart disease, which leads me to heart scars. So when you have heart scars, you've been wounded so deeply at the heart level that the scars go all the way to your soul. So it's not just emotional, it's a soul hurt. The heart scars may be affecting your physical heart and energy level. Lost soul fragments. So shamans talk about a soul retrieval. So the way I like to explain this, let's say you're a car and you're driving down the road and you're missing a hubcap. This happens to me frequently where a friend of mine will go, Catherine, you're missing a hubcap. Well, I'm a girl. I don't really necessarily pay attention to my hubcaps. But then I'll have a friend who's always replacing my hubcaps that I missed that I didn't even realize were missing. So when you lose a part of your soul, you may have lost key aspects of yourself along the way, causing you to feel incomplete and unfulfilled. So, for example, for myself, there was about 17, 18 years between my first book and my second book. My second book is called What is Healing? And I remember when I finally wrote the rough draft of What is Healing, I sat down and wept because I had finally recovered my writer self. Negative cords and hooks. You may have allowed others to hook into your personal energy in a parasitic manner so that they're draining your personal chi and relying on your hard work and even money. Negative interference. No matter what you do to try to get ahead in life, something always seems to be blocking your way. So, and one of the healings that I do is I work on your energy field to remove all negative interference from the beginning of time to now, to like clear that out at the soul level. Negative self-image. I remember this beautiful lady came to one of my yoga classes and she was really struggling with feeling good about herself. So no matter what you do to try to build your self-esteem, mistakes in this or some other lifetime may have convinced you that you're a bad person or that you're unlovable or unworthy, right? And we have to be compassionate because we have to, when you look at human history, all of human history, all the mistakes that we've made, the murder, the war, the slavery, the racism, the misogyny. So we've all made all kinds of mistakes, and we have to understand that you are forgiven and to forgive yourself. And that no matter what mistakes that you have made, you're still lovable and you're still worthy of being here and of being loved. Parallel universe integration. This is a very interesting one. So you may be running multiple lifetimes at once, leading to exhaustion, misdirection, and confusion. So I worked recently with a gentleman who was having energy problems. And I said to him, at a soul level, you're very ambitious. So you're literally running several lifetimes all at once. And this is just exhausting you. This is like a good way of understanding it is like multitasking at the soul level, right? Rather than being all here right now. Past life vows. So there's any number of past life vows that you may have taken in this or another lifetime that may be affecting you. Past life vows to avoid giving or receiving love. Past life vows to be a caretaker. Past life vows blocking your creativity. So I'm going to be looking at, when I'm doing a soul reading, what your past lives are. Past life vows of poverty and chastity. So if you're poor and, alone, you may have agreed to stay poor and celibate. Not a particularly fun vow to have taken. Past life vows of vengeance and revenge. In this or any other lifetime, you may have promised to avenge a perceived wrong. Consequently, you find yourself constantly out to fight injustice. Past life vows to enslave others or be a slave. I remember I had a friend who was homeless, and I was watching him at the soul level, and I'm like, he is literally living the slave archetype and living the karma of a slave. It's like, even though he could have easily freed himself, and of course, it's so easy for me and others to go, oh, all you have to do is XYZ. But at the soul level, he was living the past life vow of being a slave. Past life vows to deny the presence of God within you. So I feel that many people who are atheists have taken this past life vow. And again, I respect everyone's spiritual views, so I'm not here to tell anybody that I know better, because I absolutely don't. I'm quite humble about that. You're on your soul path. Being agnostic, I think that's a pretty honest point of view, because you're like, I really don't know. Being an atheist, on the other hand, says, I know there is no God. So that I might disagree with. But if you find yourself struggling with atheism, you may have taken a past life vow to deny the presence of God within you. So you may have made a soul agreement to deny your innate spirituality. And when you're doing this, you're denying at the deepest level who you actually are and what you're really all about. Past life vows to prevent the personal use of healing energies. So lots of people, maybe they study Reiki or something simple and they think it doesn't work for them. Well, you may have made a soul agreement preventing you from giving or receiving healing energy, causing you to experience constant illness. Past life vows to deny personal responsibility. You may have entered into a soul agreement that causes you to blame others for your life and the life that you yourself have created, right? And we all know at a deep spiritual level, you're choosing everything. And again, sometimes if you're in a dilemma, you can ask yourself, why am I choosing this experience, right? And if you don't like it, maybe you can make another choice. Past life vows to sacrifice. You may have made a soul agreement to sacrifice your life, your money, or your energy for the benefit of others. And this is a past life vow that many hero people have made. And it's great to be a hero and sacrifice for others, but you don't want to completely give up the joy of being alive for yourself. Um, Past life vow of suffering. So I can remember working with different people, and at a soul level, they have made past life vows to literally take on the suffering in the world. And Jesus said, the poor will be always with us. So this is not a good past life vow. I always say, well, why not serve as, I give the example of a fluffy kitten or a puppy. They serve by being cute and adorable and making everybody happy and laugh. So you may have entered into this soul agreement to take on world suffering, not recognizing that you also can serve by lifting up your own personal vibration and thereby raising others up in your presence. So a better way to think about it is when I raise my own vibration, when I'm as happy as possible, when I'm at peace, when I am radiating love and compassion and acceptance, that is what everybody around me receives just by my mere presence. And so, a good way to think about this is to be the lighthouse. When you're a lighthouse, you're grounded, you shine your light. And then by being grounded and shining your light, then others can find their way in your present. So I don't need to go out and rescue anybody. All I have to do is shine the light of my soul, of my true authentic self. Now, with that, let's take a break and listen to another message from one of our commercial sponsors here at UK Health Radio. My name is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. I'm here today talking to you about what is a soul reading. I'll be right back. Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer here, talking to you about what is a soul reading. So, one of the things that I don't like to spend a lot of time talking about is negative spiritual energies. So, why don't I like to spend a lot of time talking about this? Whatever we focus on is what expands. So, I have a personal prayer practice. I call in my angels. I work with angels. And I have a group of angels around me. I know where they are, what they do, and I call in them for help. So I don't like to spend a lot of time on this, but I will touch on this since we are talking about reading the soul. So many people have negative spiritual energies attached to them, right? And a good way to understand this is these are spiritual parasites. I remember the very first person that I ever cleared was actually a Catholic priest. So he came to me, he had severe jaw pain and severe depression for about 5 years that he couldn't get rid of. And I remember figuring out what was going on, and I was like, oh, great, you are going to tell a Catholic priest they are possessed. And I prayed and I asked for guidance, and I was told, yep, you need to tell him that, and he can handle it. And I told him, and he said, well, I know. And I said, well, I respect your spiritual tradition. Go get somebody who can help you clear it. And he couldn't. So I cleared him. So I've been doing this for a very long time. I remember one time helping a client, and I always ask guidance about whether or not the person needs to understand. Sometimes all they need to do is understand that they feel better, right? But many people who have suffered severe mental emotional challenges have negative energies attached to them. And I remember one time helping a gentleman, and he came back the next week and he asked me, he said, "Are you a witch?" And I said, "No." And I said, "If you call me that, you will no longer be my client." And he said, "Well, you could be a white witch." No, I'm not. I'm just a very highly trained healer. So let's go through this briefly. So, a good way to think about negative spiritual energy is that it's very low frequency vibrations. So, when you understand healing, all healing happens by lifting your vibration, right? People walk in my healing room and they go, "I feel better already." Just walking in the room. It's full of angels, full of orchids. The energy is very clear and light. So, negative spiritual energy is very low frequency vibrations. Black magic, either consciously or unconsciously, an individual or group of people intends for you to be harmed. Earthbound entities, you may be bothered by spirits who have passed out of their physical bodies but not crossed over into heaven. I remember years ago, someone came to for a session, and she was a young woman with high blood pressure. And, she was pretty healthy. There was no logical reason she should have high blood pressure. And I figured out that basically she had a ghost in her house. And I remember the session was late at night, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell a lady who's going to her home by herself that she has a ghost in her house. But I said, I need to go to your house. So I went to the house. I actually brought another healer with me. And it turned out that a young woman had actually died in their bedroom. And they were able to confirm this. Of course, it was a drug overdose. Don't do drugs. And at any rate, she was so surprised at suddenly being dead that her spirit had not passed over. Emotional turmoil entities. So people who do dowsing, one of the things a good dowser does is clears out the energy in your house. So for example, let's say I'm in the kitchen and I have an argument with somebody, could be about anything. I'm arguing about money or what to eat for dinner. It doesn't matter. The energy of that argument will actually stay in that place, right? So if somebody dies in a room, that energy will be there. So places hold the energy of traumatic events that have happened there, and a good dowser can clear that out. A good energy healer can clear that out. But you may be unable to escape the emotional energy lingering in your home, office, or space because of constant fighting, domestic abuse, or even crime. Fear entities. You may be trapped by frequent anxiety caused by either a group of fearful people, your own expectations of failure, or the energy of panic anywhere in the world. Gloom, doom, and disaster. You may be suffering from a low frequency energy that often follows a war, famine, financial collapse, terrorism, or other man-made calamities. Gray entities. Deceptive energies may try to harm you. They are often hard to spot and tend to trick you when you least expect it. They hide in the shadows and try their best to keep you from seeing what they're really doing. Negative spirit attachment. A low frequency energy may have attached itself to you. The result can be pain, suffering, anxiety, or unrelenting depression and hopelessness. Poltergeist. A ghost is a spirit responsible for upsetting disturbances. And I don't play with this. I'm from Savannah. In Savannah, they have ghost tours. I've never been on a ghost tour, not interested in going on a ghost tour. This is real stuff. Satanic entities. In multiple religions, these devilish entities are known to create evil wherever they go. So whenever I clear negative spiritual energies, I clear the energy. And then the second part, which is really critical, which a lot of healers don't do, is then I do a healing on your energy field. And I worked recently with somebody, and they had a negative spirit release ceremony with another healer, but the healer then did not fix the holes in their field. So it's a law of physics that whenever you're standing, there's a magnetic field perpendicular to that. New Agey people, we call this your aura. You can have holes in your field. And the reason that many people get entities attached to them is that there's holes in their field. Common ways you can get holes in your field is from a history of abuse. So if I am working with anybody who's had any kind of abuse, whether sexual, physical, mental, emotional, I'm always going to look at your aura and see if there's holes in your field. And if there's holes in your field, you need to patch those up. And I always say, I'm a nice person, but if I leave the door open, anything that could come in. So moving on to a more positive subject, when I do a soul reading, I also look at how your soul communicates to you. So you have to look at the bigger picture. Your intuition is literally the whispers of your soul, right? And there's four primary ways that your soul communicates with you. The way my soul communicates with me is claircognizance, which is psychic knowing. You know what you need to know, often without any logical explanation. And if you want to understand more about this in greater depth, I encourage you to read or listen to the audiobook of my book, Unlimited Intuition Now. I'm claircognizant. That's the same gift as Edgar Cayce. I just know stuff. People ask me, how do you know? It's because I do. There's also clairaudience, psychic hearing. You receive information in the form of words, sounds, and vibration. So when you really understand your soul gifts, you can use them in your work. I have a client, he's an Emmy award-winning sound producer, and he's clairaudient. He's not only got genius level listening, he's also clairaudient. So he receives information from his soul through words, sounds, and vibration. I love clairaudience because it's really simple. It's like it's the foot. Go here. Don't do that. It's simple. I love that. Clairsentience, psychic feeling. You pick up the energy, vibe, and feelings. So there's a great saying, trust the vibes, energy doesn't lie. Clairvoyance, psychic vision. So you receive information and visual symbols and inner pictures. And again, you can learn more about the many ways your soul communicates with you by reading or listening to Unlimited Intuition Now. And I'm going on. There's more that I look at when I'm reading the soul, but the last thing that I'll talk about is I talk about soul medicine. So, when I'm doing reading the body, I'm going to be looking at what natural healing remedies will work for you, whether it's exercise or looking at your environment or different kinds of techniques such as Reiki or craniosacral therapy or acupuncture and, herbs, vitamins, minerals, flower essences, all of that. But you also understand because you're a soul and your soul needs nurturing. So you can nurture your body and you can nurture your soul. So I'll also be looking at what kind of soul medicine works best for you. So examples of soul medicine, breath work, prayer, meditation, mantras, rest, unscheduled time alone to process, laughter, dancing, time in nature, time with loved ones, hugs, sunlight, flowers. One of my big soul medicines is flowers. So I have a huge organic garden. I raise orchids in my healing room, and they lift my soul. Companionship of a pet, volunteer work, writing, channeling, singing, painting, travel, time away from home, setting healthy boundaries, storytelling, spiritual family, spiritual community, new challenges. I could go on. So, again, if you're listening to this broadcast and you're realizing, okay, I am a soul, what's going on with me is happening at the soul level, then you may want to ask yourself, how can I nurture my soul? And with that, there's more that I could say, but I really appreciate you listening. My name is Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer, Amazon #1 bestselling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. And remember, you are a soul, and your soul is what's really happening. So when you tune into what's happening at my soul, you can understand what you need and what will work to help you get better. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.